Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Outsource Advantage. I'm Derek Kissos, your host, and I'm really excited to have our guest on today, Bob Thomann from BrightBot. And so, Bob, would you introduce yourself to the audience and let everyone know a little bit about your background?
Sure, Derek. That sounds great. My name is Bob Thomann. I am president of BrightBot. I am also a physician and assistant in the ER for the last 20 years, and I have a background in electrical engineering. During the COVID pandemic, just a little bit of background about BrightBot. They were having us use masks for days on end, and their idea of keeping everything sanitized was put it in a brown paper bag and bring it back the next day. So I was just like, God, this is horrible. There's got to be a better way to do this. So during that time, I also was working with a nonprofit I'm in, and we started making UV-C boxes to bring to work, basically, so all of my coworkers could sanitize our masks, our stethoscopes, badges, phones, things like that. And then that kind of broke out into, well, hey, what can we do inside the rooms for the patients and the workers also? So we started making these roll around UV-C units, and the problem was that the hospital had looked at UV-C companies in the past, and the ones out there that they had looked at were over $100,000 for a system, and it was something that the hospital couldn't justify or afford at that time. So we didn't have anything. So I'm like, well, there's got to be a better way to do this on a more cost-effective basis and still get a medical grade UV-C light out of it. So
Right.
So we started making UV-C lights, and that's kind of the motto of our company is to let's give you something that's medical grade, cost-effective, that anybody can use. So, and that's kind of where we started.
Yeah, that's great. And, the team told me a little bit about your background, which I thought was fascinating, by the way. I'm a fellow veteran myself. And so if you could just, I think given that, you're operating in ERs, you have the background you have, could you just elaborate a little bit more on kind of your background and how that kind of led you to where BrightBot is?
Okay. So, like I said, it all started, I went into the Army when I was 17, and that was
What branch? Branch in the Army.
Yeah, I was Army Reserve and infantry. So, it's always the recruiter. You go back to hey, you don't want to do engineering. You're going to be doing that during school the whole time. Why don't you have fun playing with M16s? And I'm like, being 17, I'm like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. So, I started out in infantry and then ended up going over to armor at some point. But so that was, my beginning in the military, and I think I spent 6 years in the military. But
well, Bob, I was not as brave as a soul of you. I was in adjutant general, which is basically personnel. So I thank you for your service way more so than people should thank me for my service. So
yeah.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. But I think, BrightBot is kind of a culmination of like everything up to this point in my life. So I have an electrical engineering background, so I did that for years. And then, I got tired of doing that. So I went into the medical field as a physician assistant in the emergency room, which I've been doing for the last 20 years. But part of that also was I started doing nonprofit work, which was nice because we can go overseas, do medical training, do medical work. We got into water purification. And one of the things I noticed, if you're doing something in a third world country, taking a lot of complicated technology over there and trying to replicate it is very difficult. They don't have the money, they don't have a lot of the resources we have. So that kind of is the background of like BrightBot is like, we get the job done, but we don't have to have every single bell and whistle there is out there. And in that way we can kind of keep it affordable for everybody.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful.
So,
that's wonderful. How long has BrightBot been in existence?
Oh, it'll be 4 years in July.
That's great.
So, yeah, we started right at the beginning of the pandemic.
That's fantastic, and obviously, what a great time to do that, right? Given the demand was there,
Yeah.
And can you walk me through kind of your product offerings? Because I believe you have different sizes of models and things like that. So can you walk me a little bit through just your span of products, any services you provide with that, et cetera?
Yeah. So right now, like the two main ones we have the BrightBot 60, which uses like 60-inch UVC bulbs, and the BrightBot 48, which uses the 48-inch bulbs. We also have a smaller tabletop unit that you can just pick up and move around, and that one we're we didn't sell so many commercially, but we ended up giving a lot of them away for people that have cancer and are going through chemotherapy.
Oh, wow.
So they can put them in their house and sanitize the house, when they're immunocompromised. So,
Yeah.
but the 48 and the 60 are real good. For hospitals, for nursing homes. We even have them in dentist offices.
That's great. What kind of separates you in your mind? I think I have it in my head, but for our listeners out there, what kind of separates you from the other big players in the market in terms of UVC disinfection?
Yeah. So, like I said, we want to keep it simple. We want to keep it, cost effective, and that's the biggest thing. So, our products range. I think our most expensive products around $10,000, and then we go down. I think the 48's around $8,000. But the other major players in the market, they could run over $100,000, maybe $70,000 for a unit, and that's all fine and great. But smaller facilities like nursing homes or dental offices or clinics, they can't afford something that's that expensive. And the other thing with our smaller or the more cost effective units is you can have more of them in the hospital and therefore be sanitizing more area than you would with a more expensive unit.
Right.
And then as far as the simple aspect of it, we don't have any software. It's very simple to train people to use this. So, you may spend a half hour to train. So if you have like a turnover of, employees in the company, training the next person isn't going to take, a day or two. It's just, hey, here's the instructions and, go ahead, put it in a room, shut the door, turn it on with the remote and you're ready to go. We also tried to make it, as far as maintenance, very easy to work on, so we're in the process now of putting together some YouTube videos. Our product's fairly modular. So, let's say if a remote control goes out, we can send you one the next day. I can walk you through it, or you can just watch the video and it'll take you 10 minutes to replace that and put it in. We just added motion sensors to the unit. So if something goes wrong with that, you can just take off the top box and, we'll send you a new one and then you could send the old one back to us and we'll fix it. So, you don't have these, we're going to be down for a week or 2 weeks sort of scenarios. We can get you back up and running, fairly quickly.
Yeah, and it sounds like you don't need to wait on even service techs, which is kind of a challenge in the industry right now as well. Yeah. Totally understand that. Talk to me a little bit about kind of how you do your R&D. And so, where do you get the feedback for research and development for maybe new features or things that need tweaked? What's that process look like for BrightBot?
Yeah. So, when BrightBot came out, our official, our first run around was, we had a IV pole with some, tubing around it with some light bulbs on it and a ballast in there. And, that's what we were like donating to the hospital. And, then as we, ramped up and, everything got better. But, so I have my ideas of, what the system should be like. But, even like when we deal with HHS, I get feedback from you guys that says, hey, the casters on the bottom are a little bit small. When we go over the thresholds for an elevator, this thing kind of bounces around a little bit. Can you put bigger casters on it? I'm like, oh yeah, sure. So, getting ideas from the customer really helps out, and like, I think another one that came from you guys was, some of the other products we've had have had troubles with bulbs breaking, and then, you have downtime to clean that up. And then, so, what can you do about shatterproof bulbs? And, so did a little research. We found a place that made shatterproof coverings that we could like heat shrink onto the bulbs. And so we went ahead and did that. So, we had the basic design, and then, from our customers, then we get, like, what do you guys need? What do you want? And then we kind of go from there to kind of tweak stuff and, give you guys what you want. It doesn't really matter what I think is good. You guys are the ones buying it. So,
Right.
try to make you guys happy.
Yeah, and I just keep what's popping in my head and talking is you are kind of the perfect situation of someone who has the background you have, but also works in the hospital, also at the start of a pandemic, and just took the initiative to put all that to use, which is just fascinating to me. How that all comes about.
Yeah, and I didn't even, when I first did it, I wasn't even thinking about making a company. It was just,
Right.
hey, let's do some stuff to keep everybody safe here, and then it's like, okay, so now there's more need, and so then things just kind of snowballed from there. So
Yeah, that's great. What's been some of the challenges in the 4 years that you've had to overcome, and what kind of process do you go through to get through that? Because I imagine you don't have thousands of employees in manufacturing
no,
plants across the world, and so your
no,
challenges are going to be much more unique than the big players out there, and I think that's going to be fascinating to some of our listeners as well.
oh, absolutely. So I mean, I did everything backwards. So when you think of a startup company, you think, oh, we're going to get a group of people together, we're going to form an idea, we're going to get some financing, and then we're going to figure out all the issues that we're going to have, and kind of work back until we're ready to make a prototype. And just due to the situation, it was like, hey, we need something like yesterday. So I'm making prototypes first. And then the one nice thing that I had about working in the hospital is, as I make a prototype, I'm actually working there. Down in the ER, we were using 3 of them. So I could see the things that were working or not working and make adjustments, which I think most players aren't able to do that because they don't have somebody, working with the product as they're kind of trying to design it. But the hard thing is then, then you're bootstrapping it on your own, and, so you kind of go slowly, and then, you find out, okay, well, we need to do this, compliance thing. And so then you have to, okay, now how do we have to change our design to make this, or what do we need, hoops do we need to jump through for this? One of the biggest things I learned was, I'm a medical guy and I'm an engineer. I'm not a marketer. I'm not a salesman. Like, I can't do everything myself, so there was a lot of reaching out to other people, and there still is, reaching out and just knowing what I don't know then really is an asset, because then I can go to other people and kind of, ask them, hey, what should I do here?
Yeah, that's great. And it's also refreshing. You call it backwards. I'd probably say it's more forwards than most companies should do. But I also think it's just great that you saw a need and you went out to do it to solve the hospital's problem that you were working in, instead of looking at it to make a dollar. Obviously, it's developed now into a business, but I think that's great. But I have to ask you, so is that one of your machines in the back over there with the cover over it?
Yeah. And actually,
I want to know
the funny thing is,
I want to know less about that, and I want to know about the artwork on the other side of the door.
that's the kid. So I got an 8 and 6-year-old, and they're putting up stuff all over the house, and so I'm working in the ER. I have a family, and I'm running a business, so I'm just pretty busy all the time. So
you must get great sleep every night.
Oh God, no, not really. Because in the ER we're rotating shifts too. So one day I'll be working days, and the next day I'll be working nights. So it's and the kids are always up at the same time every morning. So
yeah. I have 2 young kids as well. 5, about to be 6 and 4 next month, and I noticed that, and it caught my eye. So, yeah. As one of the questions I like for individuals like yourself, for the audience, is some of it aren't always end users, meaning like in our hospitals or even in airports or resorts, people who would use UV technology, but also people who may have an idea. Maybe it's not in UV. Maybe it's in some other form or feature or function. What would be some advice you would give to entrepreneurs who are similar to you in terms of lessons you've learned and say, look, if I had this idea again and I could rewind the clock, what would you do a bit differently? Or what were some of the things, I guess, conversely to that, outside of what would you do differently? What are the things you're really happy with that, even though, as you stated, might be backwards, actually helped?
Well, I think, what helped was just doing it. You can wait around till you think you're ready, and then you end up never doing anything. So, you just kind of have to jump in and do it. With that said, do a little research, get out and look and see who's out there, what other products are out there that are similar, what they have, and the good and bad aspects that you can see in that. And, talk to your end users. So, at my hospital, I talk to the infection control people. I talk to, housekeeping, the people in surgery units, and I was able to find out kind of what they needed. But it's, things I didn't think about were, regulatory things and, how do you scale and, all these different aspects that, somebody who's done this once or more than once, they're like, yeah, those are easy things to think about. But, if you're just coming up with an idea, I would say, bring on people, to talk to and that have done this before. I joined a couple of organizations that had mentors, so they were able to give me insights that, I hadn't even thought of. And so I think, that's a really good thing, like some of these incubator type startup places. And they got people that, have a lot of experience in that, which, goes back to, you don't know everything. So find somebody who knows more than you.
That's right. That's right. No, that's great. Where are you guys going next? Is it any new products or just product feature tweaks? What's kind of the, pick a point in time, year, 2 years, 5 years, where do you, I guess, two-part question, where do you see BrightBot going? But then where do you see the UV industry in general from there's a term, I'm going to say disinfection, but it's not. I know there's another term for eradication of whatever. I'm not an expert. But kind of where do you see both of those items going?
So I think, with our product, I think we have a pretty solid product at this point. We've got motion sensors, we got shatterproof bulbs, we've got independent lab testing showing that it works. It's simple to use. So I think we're okay as far as that. And those are the things that I kind of am good at. But, developing the relationships with people, getting the product out there. So, sometimes it's hard to break into an industry that already has a bunch of solid players there. And people are like, oh yeah, we've been using these guys and these guys and these guys, why should we change to, this new guy? So, those are the challenges I have as far as, just expanding, our base, and, selling our product. And just even in the industry, there's a lot of infection control people that are somewhat skeptical about UVC, or they don't quite understand that it kills pretty much everything. So with enough time, and if the light's shining on it, it's going to sanitize it. And it's not a new concept. They've been using this stuff for, over 100 years. We got some measles outbreaks up here in Chicago, and back in the 30s, I think in Philadelphia, they were using UVC, in the schoolrooms to shine on upper air surfaces to reduce measles in the classroom. So, there's, studies about that. So, and then all the vaccinations came out and that kind of fell off a little bit. But, now with the, the different antibiotic resistant pathogens out there, this will become more and more of a useful product. There's no chemicals and it kills stuff. So, it's not antibiotic based or anything like that. So the pathogens don't really get used to it and find a way to get around, how it eradicates them. So.
Yeah. My favorite thing about your product, obviously minus the price point, which is probably one of the best features, right? Given what else is out in the market, but is the ease of use. When I round hospitals, or honestly any facility that would have these as a potential, and mostly honestly it's in operations and in-house operations where it's the hospital staff or whoever staff doing it. I would say it's about 80 to 90% of times where the equipment's just sitting in a supply room, right? And
Yeah.
it's one of three things. It's people don't know how to use it, which is the main thing because they've got these fancy interfaces with all these cool features that no one's going to use anyways, right? It's like a new car. But then it's also waiting on either parts or the labor and service and all those things. And so to me, I think it's a great opening for you of saying, all those things that make you not be able to use your machines, we're the fix for that, right? And by the way, we're 90% cheaper.
Yeah.
So, I think
Right.
it's a win-win, and I think you got a great product. I know I try not to talk about HHS a lot on these, but I'm going to it for a second. We have a pretty good program with you guys, especially around the patient bathrooms,
Right.
with your smaller unit. And the thing that when I was rounding in one of the hospitals was the amount of patients who loved having them in their rooms. Loved seeing the light come under the door. We named them, not because we wanted to, the actual staff and patients made us. And they would literally say, and I'm forgetting the names, but, when are X, Y, and Z coming back to our room to visit? And that was the first I heard of it. And I looked at our VP and I said, who is that person? And they started laughing. And they go, no, that's a BrightBot. I'm like, makes sense. And at the end of the day, too, for hospitals or service providers, the biggest thing I took away from that is, obviously, it's going to do its job in eradicating pathogens. But the more important thing, and obviously you being in the military, you knew this, is perception's everything, right? Perception is king. And the fact that the patients notice that when they get their HCAP survey, they're going to check, yes, my room was always clean because I saw that blue light all the time.
Right.
And so I think even just that intangible aspect is what I love about UV technology.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, you've got, the HCAP scores. You think about the marketing of this, like, hey, we go the extra mile to keep you safe. And, and with UVC, the other thing is it gets areas you can't wipe down. So, I work in an ER and we've got equipment mounted on the walls all over the place. And so, the environmental services staff comes in, they wipe everything down, but they're not wiping down the otoscopes, or they're not wiping down, all the different equipment and curtains. Like, I mean, it's not the best for curtains. They're kind of porous, but, sometimes our curtains stay up for 6 months. And so the UV light, is sanitizing the curtains, it's sanitizing the walls, it's sanitizing equipment on the walls and anything in the air. So we started using them in the ER, and after a while, the environmental services people are like, oh, is there a COVID person in the room? Did you use a UV light? And like, they expect it. And if we don't do it, then they're upset with us. So I think, getting people to use it, once they use it, then they're like, oh, now we want it. And, we've had it and we see the benefit, and, why aren't you doing it now? So
now, question for you, does your hospital that you work in get all of your brand new products? Do you get to trial them out there?
we've got our products there. There's been some change. We've been bought up by other places and stuff, and some of the environmental services. This is where I go into we use them, but we have a new environmental services company came in, and they use a different competitor's product. And so they've got 2 of them in the hospital. Well, I sold the hospital 10 of them when COVID started, probably for, a third of the price of one of the 2 that they have. Right. And that gets back into hey, you got 2 units that you might move around the hospital. You might do 10 rooms a day at most, but, with their 2 units, the expensive ones, but with our, cost-effective product, you can have 1 on every floor.
Right.
So, you could be using them all over the place, but this is where the relationships and, these sort of things come in. And so that's kind of the challenge at this time.
Yeah, that's great. One of the last questions I have is around, if we have a hospital administrator or, a outsourced provider listening to this, what are the things they should look into when just evaluating who to reach out to, whether it's you, I won't name your competitors by name, but, give them some insight where if you took your BrightBot hat off for a second and you said, look, these are the things you really need to look into in selecting a vendor for UV disinfection. What should they consider?
Well, one is price, obviously. Two, the things you don't think about are like the hidden costs. So, is there a software agreement? Is there a maintenance agreement? What are the yearly costs for, bulb replacement or, things like that. With BrightBot, I think every 2 years you replace the bulbs and it's maybe $600. So it's, low. And then, how does the service, like if you call BrightBot, probably you're going to get me and I'll walk you through whatever you need, hopefully within that same day and then get whatever needs to get done. But some of the bigger companies, then you've got a little bit more red tape and stuff. But you want to make sure that, they've had some testing or at least that, it shows, how powerful the bulbs are and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I think those are some of the main things. And then, when I first got into this, I was talking to some guy and he's like, oh yeah, well, we'll get some stuff from China and then we'll assemble it here and then we'll say it's made in the United States and then we'll sell it for 3 times what we bought it for. I'm like, well, that's not really what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to, make a little better product and, something from here. But, just, kind of the service you get with the product, how willing are they to help kind of walk you through stuff and then, just make sure, you understand what all the costs are going to be, for a whole year, as opposed to just the purchase of it.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Bob, I have a question for you. Tell us one thing, one interesting fact about you or fun fact about you. Or something you like to do. Something just to get to know you a little bit better as a person.
I think, what I like to do, I just doing things with the kids. Until I had them, I didn't really realize what I was missing. And now it's just, they're unbelievable. And, at some point when they get a little bit older, I want to start taking them on some mission trips, around the world and, kind of letting them see everything that's out there and stuff. So
that's great.
Kind of what I got. So
that's wonderful. Any parting comments for the listeners before we sign off here?
Just take a look at our website, see what we have to offer. And, I think with our price point and with the features we have, I think we're a good competitor, but, people can see what we got and see what they think. So.
That's great. Well, Bob, thank you again so much for coming on. Hopefully this was valuable to everyone out there listening or watching this. Thanks for joining the Outsource Advantage. If you haven't, please subscribe. We release these every 2 weeks. And Bob, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, you too, Derek. Have a great day.